Some of the most vulnerable people in the UK are now at risk. Yes, this past Wednesday, Chancellor Rachel Reeves delivered her spring statement to the House and to the nation, her latest blow to Britain's economy. So, did her last budget tank growth, leaving us with a measly 1% forecast for 2025? A welfare cut shredding the safety net for the vulnerable? And will her gamble on stability over prosperity backfire, leaving families poorer whilst promises of renewal ring hollow? We'll be talking about this and much, much more on today's episode on InFocus with me, Curtis Hinton, right here on Q's News. And joining me to unpack it all is journalist and broadcaster David Atherton, broadcaster and director of the Heartland Institute for Europe and the UK, Lois Perry, and making his debut in the studio is a political commentator, Lee Harris. Welcome all three of you to the programme.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis.
Lee, welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you in here.
Yeah, it's a bit different than doing it over Zoom. So much happier.
There's a lot to get through. Obviously, welcome Dave, welcome Lois, very regular with the programme in the studio. Rachel Reeves delivered her spring statement. I like to call it an emergency budget, so does Mel Stride. Lee, I'm going to start with you first. Her budget in October crashed the economy, right? That's why she's come out.
Yes, this was an emergency budget, whether she likes it or not. What struck me the most is, I don't know if anyone's seen the GIF of there's like an animal in a room and it's on fire, and it just says "This is fine." That's exactly how her budget came across to me. It was pure gaslighting. The whole thing. So she presented Labour as doing a good job so far, and everything was going to plan. And of course, it's not. The exact opposite is happening. We've got businesses who aren't recruiting. We've got a flatlining economy. They halved the growth outlook, or the OBR halved their growth outlook for this year. It's an absolute disaster. But they basically made out that everything was fine. Yeah. It was probably one of the worst things I've actually had to watch. Genuinely, I just found the whole thing almost an insult, because it was watching someone, to me, who was basically just lying through their teeth from the moment they started to speak to the moment they finished. And huge disaster.
We're seeing that a lot at the moment, Dave, with Labour, lying through their teeth. I mean, they blamed Donald Trump's tariffs. They're blaming the black hole, which they supposedly filled with their October budget. Everyone's seeing through the noise. Everyone's seeing through the lies. What are they going to do moving forward? Because they can't come back again shortly.
Well, I think the Uni Party have been crashing the economy since the end of Margaret Thatcher. That's the way I look at it. There seems to be this sort of ridiculous notion in this country that tax and spend works. You would have thought with mass immigration and nearly £3 trillion worth of debt, we'd be rich beyond our means.
Yeah.
But in fact, we're just bumping along at the bottom. Rachel Reeves has prodded it in the wrong direction. It's all going west, and I have to say, I do think I don't want to praise a Labour policy, but far be it from me to do that. But the fact she wants to row back on our poorly welfare budget, I think it's £120 billion, infinitely bigger than our defence budget. I think it's to be welcome. There's 5 million people in. Well, 5 million. Take a few off for the genuine people, but there's approaching 5 million people who are swinging the lead, are claiming they're mentally unable.
25% of this country is disabled.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Exactly
What,
that.
mentally disabled?
Well, of course, there are genuine people.
Of course, yeah.
I'm always happy to say there are genuine people.
Funny enough,
I was just very briefly reading a story about a disabled guy who was 59, he's been found dead after the Department of Work and Pensions cut all his benefits by mistake. It's absolutely disgusting.
It's chilling. But I mean, this is a Labour Party who knew that they were going to kill several 100,000 pensioners by cutting their winter fuel allowance, and that was their own report which told them that. And what did they do? They went ahead and cut it.
Yeah.
Well, we know they want to kill people. That's why they've been trying to push through this assisted suicide bill, which it looks like is about to, or has just collapsed, or is collapsing in the process of collapsing.
Into the future.
I think it's entirely fair to say that, I think I've mentioned this before, that when you read the book about communism, Animal Farm, it talks about how they tell all the animals that there'll be an area for the elderly animals to go out, the horses to go out and graze. And one of the most sinister moments in the book is when they go to the area which is supposed to be for the elderly horses and disabled horses and animals to live out the rest of their days, and it's been concreted over. So communists don't like old people. They don't like disabled people. So I'm not surprised at all. But do you know what does surprise me? Why hasn't she rolled back? This is if we actually believe that she has anything to do with what goes in this budget, which I happen to not do, but her paymasters, her masters, whatever, on the whole thing to do with the national insurance contributions. That because it's been, you can see live, people are laying people off left, right, and centre, and it. Funnily enough, I'm not a feminist in any way whatsoever, but. Predominantly women my age and older who work in places like the cafes in Sainsbury's, which have now all shut. You know, why haven't they reversed the increase on employers' contributions to national insurance? You can see they're not taking people on. Every single business, from small businesses to big businesses, have said it's a mistake. Unless you accept that what the plan is to completely and utterly annihilate the economy using net zero, deindustrialisation, and no private enterprise whatsoever.
Then, then as well, very briefly, the Labour Party set up some brand new quangos. You know, it's just
right, good.
Yeah. You know, lots of
We
more.
needed some more of those.
Yeah. Useless public sector people doing public sector jobs and costing us a fortune.
And they just did they're doing a clear out of the civil service, and then they're setting up stuff like this, which just doesn't make sense. You alluded to earlier at the savings. 3.4 billion. We've sent more than that to support Ukraine. Now, whatever your stance is, we're increasing our own defence budget by 2.2 billion in 25-26 and up to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. We've sent 16 times that at least to Ukraine, 20 times that to Ukraine.
Yeah, very briefly, we also spend £7 billion on welfare for people that weren't born in this country. And we also spend 6.6 billion on channel migrants every year.
It's painful, right? As British citizens who contribute to society in terms of tax, it's painful. Regardless if you are born here, if you contribute to society, I'm of the opinion you should stay, obviously, because a lot of this country was built that way after the war, let's face it. We needed that, it's great. But there's so many people who have come here now and they're just rinsing everyone else.
Well, yeah.
Just going back to the budget quickly, what gets me about all this is it was completely predictable.
Yeah.
Everybody knew that the policies that she was going to implement, or Rachel Reeves was going to implement, were going to cause this in the economy.
Yeah.
That's the bit I can't get my head around. So it does feel a little bit like possibly this is deliberate, but it's immensely frustrating to know that what she's going to do. So they said, if you remember, Labour basically pinned everything that they had on growth. Yep. That was their only thing to get them out of jail, effectively. Mm-hmm. So these policies are okay because we're going to grow the economy. We're going to spend 70 billion that we haven't got because we're going to grow the economy. And I'm not an economist, but I was sat there thinking, but you're introducing policies that will literally shrink the economy.
Yeah, they're not stupid.
Yeah, so how do these two things add up? And it just didn't make any sense to me. So all of this is just inevitable.
Ideological, partly.
Exactly. It's ideological, cruel, heartless, and so many different levels. And like I said, they spent 70 billion. At the same time, they were telling us about this fictitious 22 billion black hole.
That they taxed 40 billion.
Which the OBR won't even legitimise.
Yeah.
So I find the whole thing just utterly ludicrous.
Well, they've got friends in high places. Andrew Bailey clearly had an agenda with Liz Truss. We've spoken about that prior on the programme. But when you look at what the two budgets had against each other, ultimately, by sitting today, if Liz Truss was still the Prime Minister, we'd probably look at a bit more prosperous Britain.
A bit more? What, lower taxes and pro-business? Be slightly more, yeah.
I did notice that Andrew Bailey came out and gave Rachel Reeves a bit of an out. But to the uneducated person, he was the one who said about, Trump's tariffs and stuff like this. He kind of gave her a little bit. He wouldn't have done that for Liz Truss, would he?
No.
Absolutely.
Well, it was Andrew Bailey who allegedly was behind her.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. I mean, we had spoken about it before last week on the programme, the budget. It was something we all kind of assumed was coming anyway. Taking it away from the most vulnerable people in society. It's not a good look, is it? Let's face it. This is a Labour Party who's meant to be for British people. They're meant to be for people who are on welfare. They're meant to be people who are on universal credit or disability benefits, something like that. and they're doing the complete opposite. Why aren't the backbenchers standing up more?
I think you're probably going to see a major rebellion over this.
Do you believe that it's possible with this Labour Party?
Oh, it's already happening, I think.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, very briefly, one of my followers on Twitter, I said, how are you, sort of thing, and she got a text through from Serco. Her PIP is going to be reviewed by Serco, and she's not looking forward to that.
What amazes me about all of this is, I mean, I agree, I'm sure most people agree, we need to reduce the welfare bill, don't get me wrong, and of course reduce the civil service, although this 15% is just pathetic. But we're still spending, I think they've just given literally Ed Miliband another 9 billion on top of the 22 billion or whatever it was for carbon. 8 billion at carbon capture, which takes it up to almost 20 billion just on carbon capture. So they're spending, I mean, it's what, 40 odd billion, 40 billion quid over the period of the Parliament to pay for net zero. Sure. Why don't they just scrap that? I mean, it's not going to create any benefit.
But Ed Miliband's brother, it's now public knowledge, there's a company that benefits directly from these subsidies and things to do with net zero. And whether that's, I'm not entirely sure of the specifics, but there is a direct link between Ed Miliband, his brother's company, and taxpayer subsidies that come from
how much are they hoping to save then by cutting the benefits bill? I can't remember what the figure was. Was it something like 4 billion or
3.4 billion.
3.4 billion. Which, like I said, they've just given, so they're going to take benefits off people, or which like it or like it, there is something in that I support.
No, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But how can they spend so much money on something that won't actually produce anything or do anything or reduce global temperatures? Or all
because
this
it's an ideological thing.
It's bizarre. But this is Labour. You'd think they would put, ideologically, they would put the benefits bill behind net zero.
I've said it once before, I'll say it again. If Jeremy Corbyn had won the election in 2019, this is how he would have ruled.
Oh, it's just, yeah.
No, but I think you're mistaking socialism and communism. I think a socialist Labour Party and a socialist Labour government, yeah, absolutely, 100%, would say it's a terrible thing to be cutting benefits for disabled people and elderly people. But a communist government loathes them and wants them gone because A, older people have wisdom, and B, you're not a productive unit. You are not a productive unit.
You're claiming a pension off the state. You're taking. You're not giving back anymore, even though you've given your entire life.
Also, as well, 70% of pensioners vote Tory or Reform.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Well, Reform, Dave.
What a good link! Oh, he's getting good, isn't he?
I don't know how I do it. I'm a mind reader.
You knew what was coming up next. The biggest British rally political movement happened last night in Birmingham.
It did.
For 60 years anyway. 10,000 plus flooded to Birmingham. I assume didn't pick up trash on its way out, or made its way through the trash as it went through. And that's not a dig at Birmingham. I like Birmingham. It's just the situation with the council at the moment. Reform rally. Lois.
Why are you coming?
You were there. Well, Lee was there as well. Actually, do you know what? We're going to start with Lee. Lee,
okay.
Just because you were in different positions where you were last night. At the rally. At the rally. Lee, what's your overall verdict?
I was very impressed. It was a very well set up event. I was very impressed with the stage and what they did with the fake cinema and
it was
and
amazing.
the Labour and all
it
of that.
was.
It was very well choreographed. So as an event, just a completely impartial look at how they put the event on, it was top notch, very, very well done. The speeches were fantastic. I think I put out a post at the time, I was just being honest. I was sat there in the arena listening to Nigel Farage's speech, and I found myself, yet again, not disagreeing with a single word that came out of his mouth.
No, absolutely.
So, for me, I found it both a very good event, and I think it's helped relaunch Reform a little bit, especially after certain events.
Yeah, certain events.
They need to put this behind them now, right, Dave? This is their opportunity now. Like Lee said, it's a good opportunity for them to springboard back to the top. There's a very patriotic movement behind them. Sure. And it wasn't all about, as what people think Reform are a racist party, because they're clearly not. He was up there talking about ethnicities, different ethnicities from all different religions. And that's what Britain is. That ultimately is what Britain is. If you come here the right way, you can stay.
Sure, well, that's fair enough. And he also mentioned that illegal people will be sent back.
Yes.
So, indeed, well, the thing that astonishes me is, you know, all the rows that have been going on internally within the party don't seem to have affected them in the opinion polls.
No.
No.
I've seen that they're not even dropping points anywhere.
No. Actually,
No, they're picking up.
Yeah, one or two actually went up 2 points, and that has to be welcome. Although, you know, longer term, what maybe Nigel Farage needs to do is if he's going to form a government, he's going to be having lots of senior people in and around him, you know, to be the Home Secretary, you know, to be Foreign Secretary, Minister for this and Minister for that, and people will challenge him, you know, and people will sort of, scheme behind his back, and and there will possibly be public rows. He has to learn how to, to my mind, he has to learn how to deal with the whole disparate level of people.
Well, I would argue that the fact that the rally's gone so well and that he's up in the opinion polls shows that he's probably completely capable of knowing how to deal with things. Because look at the situation that we find ourselves in now. If he didn't know how to manage situations, then they would be down in the opinion polls and there wouldn't have been anybody at the rally.
Yeah, indeed, but I wasn't necessarily, I'm not going to the rights and wrongs.
Sorry, I've just noticed on the screen it's Farage vowels to slash ways. I wonder if you've got any consonants, please, Carol.
Carol Balderman, yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problems. So indeed, yeah. I'm so sad about the rows that are going on at the moment. I thought Rupert Lowe is a particularly capable MP, and I think he's done some great work.
Capable of calling me nuts on Twitter and causing huge amounts of people to say horrifically sexist and horribly sexual things to me over 2 days. So much so that I had to switch my phone off because it upset me so much. But yeah, carry on, Rupert Lowe. Yeah.
Well, the people who wrote to you, Rupert Lowe didn't incite them, did he?
Well, he did, yeah, because he did a tweet saying I was. No, he did because he said she's beatbop and basically atted me, and it was a call to arms.
Well,
I'm sorry, it was. I had Tommy Robinson did that to me once as well. Found her at Lois Perry 26, and I had tens of thousands of threats of rape and stuff like that.
Maybe that's a situation. Rupert wasn't very gallant and not a gentleman.
Well, what I want to do before we talk about where you were last night at Reform, the rally, Andre Walker, a friend of the programme, was actually speaking to Farage before he went live, and we've got a little clip of an interview. We've got 2 clips actually. We'll show the first one now of when he.
Can
met
I just
with him.
apologise in advance for behaving like a teenage girl in the background? Because I look like a complete.
So we don't like you, Lois.
No, I know, but my sister said, Lois, that's embarrassing.
It was
Okay. Anyway, sorry.
We've got the clip coming up just now.
Tell us a little bit about the local elections and what the point of this event is.
Well, the 1st of May is the first big electoral test since the general election, albeit not as big as it ought to be, because the vote's been cancelled for 5.5 million people, which I'm pretty blooming angry about, especially when counties like Essex have been taken off. By the way, for no good reason at all. We're told it's local government reorganisation, but the last big reorganisation was 50 years ago, and it didn't stop elections taking place. So, but that apart, we've got 23 county or unitary elections. We've got 6 mayoral contests and a by-election in Runcorn and Helsby. So it's a really big day, and for us it's a very major hurdle that we have to clear, and clear well, en route, we hope, to winning the next election.
He's very enthusiastic about what he's doing there. You can see that he is very much focusing on these council elections as a starting point for the 29 general election. Is that because, would the Conservatives do the same? Would Labour do the same? Or is it because they have the facility to do so at the moment?
You have to have a good ground game for the general election. Yeah. So local election, because I made this assumption, what's the big deal about local election? But you soon realise that actually it proves 2 things. One, that you've got your organisation together, you've got your local offices that you've set up. I think they said, that's 400?
400.
Yeah, that's right. And in the last
absolutely
year,
insane.
Zia's Youssef has just done such an amazing job.
So it gives you a bit of a dry run to see how organised you are, how together you are for that. Plus the fact if you do get lots of councillors, of course, then people are, it's marketing effectively for the general election. And then, of course, if your ground game's good in the locals, it puts people's confidence up, and they're more likely to vote for you in the general election. So they are very important, more important than I thought.
It's how the Lib Dems grew.
Yeah, exactly.
Liberal Democrats
exactly
But also, it's their first proper big test
Yeah.
since they won those 5 seats in Parliament. Some would say it was actually 6, but 5 obviously. No, and they need to. Yeah, I mean, this is so important for them because it proves. Also, if they take control of some councils, which they are planning to, and win some of the mayoralties, which they very possibly could, they show that they've got an opportunity to show that they can run a council. Or run an area, and so we could run the country because they are untested.
Of course,
with that
it's
at
an
the
opportunity
moment.
to prove their point.
It
Lois,
is.
you were there with them. We saw you there.
Yep.
How was Nigel before?
Yeah, he was bouncy. He was ready. He was. There's another bit of the clip where Andre says, "Are you nervous?" And he goes, "Me?" You know.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, he doesn't get nervous." And then I think Nigel thought a little bit better of it. So, well, of course, I'm thoughtful about it.
Yeah.
but-
By the way, Lois, was that a soft drink in Nigel's hand?
Oh, obviously, he's about to go on stage.
Right, okay.
Why did
I've got a
know what he
question.
was drinking?
I was just asking. Genuine question. Genuine question.
You know,
Could be a G&T.
it could. I don't know is the answer. He's much more capable of handling his alcohol than I am. I think everybody knows that. He says he's got hollow legs. But
A question
I don't
for
think
all
he was
three of
drinking
you.
alcohol.
He highlighted the importance of the council elections. What if reform do not live up to the expectations? Does that set them back?
I personally feel that people who are elected as on a reform candidate will have more common sense and will probably have a far higher chance of doing a good job as councillors or as mayors. Now, this political correctness rubbish and things like that, I think things will be done. I always remember some of the UKIP councillors when those type got elected 10 years ago or whatever. Yeah, it would have been about 10 years ago. And one of the councillors, rather spend money on a cleaner for the toilets, he should do it himself every night.
Right.
You know, that's the kind of
Yeah.
common sense, you know, save money and let's not tick boxes, let's get the job done. I think sort of, that's the kind of sensible, common sense approach will work for reform.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, wasn't it a shock though, the Aaron Banks announcement? I didn't. Did you know?
I did know. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
It wasn't confirmed, but they put it out on social media that was floated.
Oh, I didn't
initially,
know. I was
I didn't
surprised.
think it was a great idea, but after watching him,
He's running for the mayor of Bristol. Is
he
that right?
is my area, yeah.
Who
So yeah,
Banks.
I hope.
How do you think that's going to be received?
He said himself, he admitted himself that they hate his guards.
Well, his line was so good. He said, I'm as popular as a pork pie at a bar mitzvah. That's the actual line.
One thing he did say, which made me laugh, is that he would get the statues out of the river, although they're not in the river anymore, they're actually in a museum, and put them back up, which I thought was fantastic to hear from.
Well, because of course Colston it was not a slave thing.
He wasn't, no.
No, he was the anti-slavery.
No, he was involved slightly, but anyway, I don't
Yeah,
want to
okay, we won't go down that road.
I think it is important, these local elections, but what worries me slightly is two things. There has been an expectation of reform doing well in these local elections. So when you ask, is it going to affect them if they do badly, I think it will. I'll say three things, actually. The media will pounce on that big time because they all hate reform. So if there is, even if reform sort of like do okay, the media will call that an absolute failure and an absolute disaster or whatever. So we've got that.
If they win 9 out of 10, there'll be the focus on the 1 out of 10 they didn't win rather than the actual 9 that they did.
Exactly.
And also as well, it's a wonderful opportunity for the average voter to give Labour and the Conservatives another bloody nose.
Yeah.
Yes,
No, I
yes,
agree.
that's very true.
I
That
think
is
they
very
will
true.
do very well.
Yeah, you give the Uni Party a good kicking. That's what
they've
we
had
want.
their wings clipped a little bit because of the cancellation of the elections.
Especially in and around Essex, where they do have a nice little
collusion
hub.
And
central. He
it's
used that word, didn't he?
absolutely disgusting what they've done.
Yeah, I
it's,
agree.
It's
It's
anti-democratic.
anti-democratic, exactly
There's no
that, yeah.
need for it. See, I'm
Well,
all
there
for,
is
I'm
if you
all
want
for
to stop him
change.
getting all the councils.
Yeah, I'm all for change and I'm all for making things better. But when you can't, in your head, logically work out how that's going to take, what did they say, 3 years or 5 years or something?
it's-
Well, if it's going to, why can't you hold an election now if it's not going to happen for 3
do it in
years?
this next term.
It's collusion because, like you were saying at the beginning of the programme, Lee, about why would you do this unless you wanted to stop growth?
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
it doesn't. It only makes sense if you see it as part of a plan to prevent reform getting into power.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think it is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's damage limitation.
I think it's going to happen anyway, but I think that they've kind of pushed it and used it as a
They're
way.
hoping his momentum will drop off. I think they're thinking, oh God, this is the rise and rise and rise. Let's find a way to nip it in the bud, literally.
So I don't think will happen.
One final question on this, all three of you. A single answer. Lee, Dave, and Lois, do you believe that Reform will do well at these elections? Do you think that they will get what we expected prior 4 weeks ago? Lee?
Yes, I think they'll do well.
Dave?
I predict they'll get half of all the votes cast.
Wow. Lois?
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I want to move on to the final topic for this week, and that is the woke sentencing, the two-tier policing, which is set to come into place.
Dave's got things to
On
say
April
about this.
I've been very polite and respectful so far.
Dave, take the floor.
Well, when you have apartheid against white people ingrained into the law, it is a moment of shame for this country. If that was reversed, questions would be asked in the United Nations.
Yeah.
When there was apartheid in Rhodesia and South Africa, it was essential of the world's attention, and it was subject to sanctions and boycotts and sports boycotts and things like that. And the fact we now have it written into the law now, whereby people who have been people are being considered for jail. And the fact that if you are white, you won't get a sentencing report, but if you're non-white or whatever, woman or pregnant woman or foreigner or whatever.
What about PMT?
PMT?
Yeah. You can get murder reduced to manslaughter with that.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I haven't used it myself. But
Okay.
Well, Shabana Mahmood said, and I quote, "My reaction to what happened in relation to the Sentencing Council guidelines was very clear when we did the oral statement last week in this House. We will never stand for two-tier approach in sentencing, but I am actually getting on with fixing the problem rather than looking for a bandwagon to jump on. And that is why I have already written to the Sentencing Council, which we'll meet with them later this week. And I have made it clear that I will consider their role and their powers and legislate if I need to do so. But I will make sure that whatever changes I bring forward are workable and they deliver the fair justice system that we all need
I
and
don't
deserve."
believe them.
Yeah,
They went against her. They came back and said that they're rejecting her. So,
to be fair, Robert Jenrick's done a particularly good job on this, I think.
yes,
He
yeah.
has,
Well, he's the one who
hasn't he?
highlighted this. He believes that without him highlighting it, she would never have known about these.
yeah,
That he
yeah.
generally believes that she's that incompetent.
Yeah, exactly.
I think this is one of the most, if not the most important issues we face as a nation.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that. It's been, what I cannot get my head around is how grown-ups have sat around in a room and decided that we're going to look at the colour of your skin and dictate whether you're going to get a longer or a shorter sentencing or not. Now, I actually listened to, while I was driving to Birmingham yesterday, I listened to a very arrogant legal professional who was very supportive of two-tier sentencing and very supportive of the Sentencing Council. And she said the word, I was shouting at the radio, she said the word, politicians should keep out of it, they should leave it to the legal experts. Now, what I was shouting at the radio is they got this idea from David Lammy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that maybe she didn't know that.
And also politicians, are representing us.
And what's their other title?
Yeah.
MPs are lawmakers, right?
Yeah.
So they make the law and
Yeah.
the experts decide how to implement it.
Yeah, we don't elect judges, do we?
No.
No.
And that's right. But someone also, so I know this is a very stupid thing to say, right? But what if the judges or the Sentencing Council decided to say murder is now a civil offence and you get a fine?
Well,
Right?
by the way,
who keeps them in check?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Who keeps
The
them in
government.
check? The government keeps them
Yeah.
in check. And they have stepped so far out of line on this. I honestly think the only thing that you can do with this, the only thing that you can do is sack every single one of them.
Yeah.
It's irrecoverable. You can't say to these people, okay, have a think about what you've done. The fact that they have so they also said that they weren't going to amend them after that completely faux outrage that came from Shabina Mahmood, she's basically lying.
Yeah.
To say that she was,
she's lying.
I will legislate if I needed to. There was a bill put in front of them,
Opportunity there.
and there was an opportunity there for them to stop it in its tracks.
And they did.
You know, some people have said to me, "Oh, that's because it was a Conservative policy." Doesn't matter. She could have just
it doesn't
got that
matter.
one, got rid of that one, and then done her own 5 minutes later. She did nothing of the sort, and now on the 1st of April, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it is going to happen. Now, it might only last 24 hours or 48 hours, and we'll see how the Labour Party react. But honestly, my gut feeling about this is the Labour Party are absolutely on board with this.
I agree.
They want it, and the only reason that we're seeing this pretend outrage from Shabana Mahmood and Keir Starmer, as you rightly said, is because they know they hate this two-tier label. Keir Starmer cannot stand being called two-tier Keir. Two-tier Keir to the camera. He can't stand it. And they are hyper aware of how the public interpret this as well, because there's been a long build-up with this, back to the BLM riots, etc., and how they treated them and how they treated other people. So they are. I think the reason that they've been slow to act is they're going to say, "Oh, we don't like this," but just allow it to slip through, and that's exactly what they've done. That is exactly what they've done.
Also, I believe that Keir Starmer knows how loathed he is in the country as well.
Yeah.
How loathed he is.
Absolutely.
You see that footage of him being thrown out of that pub?
I
watch it to cheer myself up.
No. In fact, it was his bouncer who threw the landlord out of his own pub.
Yeah. And
Is
then
that
to allow Starmer through, and then he
That was
kept
in
shouting,
Bath.
"Get out of my pub!"
It was
And then
not
he
far from
got
me,
put.
was
He did decide to
Oh,
leave in the end.
really?
I edited it actually and did the EastEnders theme tune. Just after he said, "Get out of my pub," it went dum dum.
I
can't find it.
No, that is
One
brilliant.
last
That is
thing,
brilliant.
with prisons, with sentencing, prisons are overcrowded, 99% full. They reckon 800 spaces remain available. They're looking yet to allow early violent criminals to be released very, very quickly. A point each on this, we don't have long. Lee, what's your thoughts on this? It's quite dangerous for the country.
My instant reaction was I saw the article 24 hours ago of a chap that was released by Keir Starmer who murdered someone on the same day that he was released. It's absolutely ludicrous. Deport the 10,000 foreign nationals that you have in our prisons.
Yes.
So what if they haven't finished their sentence? If we have an issue with space, deport them straight out there. There's 10,000 spaces immediately. They've just opened this, mega prison, which is 1,500 spaces up north, somewhere like that. So that's going to help. Good, I'm pleased with that. But
Sure.
yeah,
Dave,
absolutely.
what's your thoughts on this?
Indeed. Well, I think the guy who got banged up was a guy called Liam Williams, I think. So anyway, no, it wasn't done for murder. It was done for manslaughter.
Manslaughter,
It was
okay.
done for manslaughter. Somebody else got the rap, but he was obviously involved.
He was involved in
You
it.
know, your first day out of prison, the first thing you do is become violent.
Well, murderous.
A murderous even.
Yeah.
By the way, if just very briefly, 2% of us, probably the vast majority in prison, who are prisoners, are probably psychopaths. Apparently, 2% of the population is psychopathic. One is an empathetic psychopath who doesn't have any care about his own personal safety. A psychopath is somebody. They're the people who win Victoria Crosses. Heroism awards. But there's the 1% of the population, like that guy who went out and committed manslaughter. He just went straight out and committed a violent act. The guy must be a psychopath. And the only way you can protect people in this country is keep them banged up for as long as you can.
Yeah.
Lois, very quickly on this.
Well, letting extremely violent criminals out early, yes or no? It's a no from me, Curtis.
Would Nigel, you can't speak, would reform, what would they do here?
Well, I mean, I think Nigel made it very clear yesterday that if you are foreign and you commit a crime, you will be deported. No ifs, no buts. That was clear, wasn't it?
And
people who are just here illegally who've also committed a crime by entering the country illegally will be deported.
Yeah.
And for those who are asking very quickly, does that mean that people that are already here, is all the comments, I would imagine that does mean the people that are already here. If you're here illegally, at some point you're going to get your collar felt.
Although it will be very difficult for him to do anything until we actually get ourselves out of the European.
Oh, there's got to be an order.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when there's the criticism, but what about the people? that they could obviously make claims at the moment, right to family life and all that jazz. But once that's removed,
it's good stuff.
Then they can go for gold.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is all we do have time for today. Big thank you to my panellists, Dave, Lee and Lois, for joining me, and for you at home for joining in as well. Remember, you can join in the conversation on social media at InFocus Qs. But for now, thanks for watching.